All right, hi everyone. We have a couple of topics that we wanted to touch base on today. First is I wanted to just raise for awareness the RSA submission deadline. I know Oasis has sent out some reminders about that, but I thought it was worth, just bringing up here for 30 seconds as well to see if there's anything that we as the OCA want to try to coordinate a submission around at all. I'm not sure if there is or is any interest in that, but I thought it was worth talking about because the deadline, it was originally supposed to be this week, but they pushed it out to next week, but it's very soon. Second topic I wanted to kind of discuss, because we've lost a couple of sponsors over the past month or two, and which to me, there's an indication there, right, that we're either not providing enough value or we're not translating our message clearly. Especially in current times, right? We've really got to have a strong value proposition for folks to continue sponsoring, sitting on the other side of this. I can tell you, like, every single dollar is being scrutinized nowadays across most companies. So it's not just a checkbox, as it were, that, oh, we paid for this last year, so we're going to pay for it this year. So with that being the case, how do we, as the OCA, want to approach that, make ourselves valuable to our sponsors and provide more value so that they stick around? I think it's important thing to talk about. To be honest, like, look at the call here. We've only got 1, 2, 3, 4 sponsors on the call out of the 15, right? I mean, that's an issue, a real issue. So I think that's worth discussing. Finally, I know Mark wanted to talk a little bit about strategy and some topics that, putting together a vision document and helping us move some things more forward in a more coherent direction, which may dovetail, these two things could be related, right? About, creating a vision document about where we want to be in 12 to 18 months and how we want to get there. That could actually help with the former issue as well. So those are the things I planned on discussing today. And Claudia just brought up a fourth, that there were actually a series of proposed updates apparently to our governance document that Chet made in February that have somewhat slipped through the cracks in terms of review. So I don't think we want to do that on this call specifically. We don't have enough people anyway, but we can bring it up, make sure that the PGB has linked to the document, and then we can asynchronously go away over the next month and look through so that we can decide whether or not we want to accept those changes, or there more feedback we want to give to Chet. I literally have not looked at it, so I have no opinion on it whatsoever. So that would be a final topic we can bring up. Duncan, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, if there is time, I guess I'd like to bring up a topic of potentially adding another project. I think it'd be a project, but maybe it'd be a working group, and that'd be partly why to bring it up. It's sort of, I brought it up before, this issue of the cybersecurity automation workshop, whether we want to sort of bring that into the fold, and it might even relate to some of the other topics you have. But if we could at least spend a couple of minutes, I'd like to at least get opinions. Over.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can talk about, and I do know we talked about it before as well, and we never really put any kind of a program in place on how to come to that decision. So yeah, that would be a good thing to talk about. Claudia?
Yeah, sorry, I was just muted. Two things on the topic of attendance for these calls. I think it would be really great if you or Mark could kind of send out an agenda a few days ahead. It's an easy thing, I know, but it's also a hard thing because, you need to take time to think about that. But that might encourage people and remind them like, oh, okay, there's this meeting and we need you. It's interesting to be there because we're actually discussing some interesting things in the meeting. I'm happy to help with that if that would be useful. Because I think, yeah, I don't know if people even like, they might have this thing in their calendar or not. And it might, if we have something interesting to discuss, like a governance update or where we need the votes, but also where it's actually interesting for people to show up, and, there's stuff happening. I don't want to belabor the point too much. I think, but still.
I think I agree. And I admit, dropped the ball again there. I think we do need to do a much better job about setting out an agenda a few days ahead of time. I would also suggest, and Claudia, feel free to just keep harassing
Okay.
myself and Mark
Will do.
nonstop. If we we haven't done it, just continue harassing. So
Will
we
do. And this,
Yes.
and the sorry, and the second thing related to that, no, not really, but related to preparing a meeting, I guess, in this case, was that there was this discussion about like the IOB working group wants to transition to a sub-project, and that is something that that needs to be approved by the PGB with a full majority vote. I just pinged Shao Kui if he is able to join the call. He says he has a meeting conflict. He could join at past potentially as a representative for the TSC. I don't know if it would have made sense to invite Charlie Frick for the IOB or not. So yeah, I don't know. I maybe should have pushed for it a bit earlier than yesterday, admittedly. But yeah, so there's, that might be another topic for the agenda for today, depending on, there's not a full majority in the call, but we need a full majority vote.
We need a full majority.
I think I asked.
I believe it's consensus based.
Hang on, because a chat looked it up earlier today, and I think he said so there is currently, so that's one of the things that would be spelled out in the updated governments if it gets ratified. But currently I think it says there's like a list of following items require full majority vote, and one of them is starting or consuming a new project into the OCA. So that's a bit, it's maybe there is already this working group, so maybe it's not a new project per se. So I don't know. It's currently, I guess you could, there's a bit flexibility there, maybe, or not. Right. I don't know. Just that
would make sense. And I think if we are, so I haven't looked at the document very much, but I think if we are going to update the governance document, this is one area that I want to take a really close look at, is what things do we absolutely think we need a vote for, and everything else should really be consensus so we can have things moving forward in an agile way. The ballots, it can be problematic. So, we definitely want them where they're needed, but where we don't think they're needed, we shouldn't have them. Just before we wrap on the other thing, and I'll give Duncan the mic. I think another thing that might, so I agree on the agenda, and please hassle us on that. I think another thing that might help is after the meeting's over, we really should, this is something we don't do, we should really email the PGB on the minutes. We should send the minutes of what we discussed, what happened during the meeting, to everybody. maybe that'll trigger some FOMO in the next month.
Yeah.
It's like, I wish I was there. That's something that we've been doing, these recordings and posting them on YouTube, which is great, and I want to keep doing that. But I think maybe just sending an email with some of the items that were discussed in the brief minutes would also be helpful, I think.
Sorry, just also we need written, like the OASIS open project rules require written meeting minutes, not a recording, especially if it comes to decisions. So we need that record of decisions and votes that were taken during the meeting in a written form anyway. And other projects have like and that was something I think we should start, and maybe we can start it today, like have a Google Doc with rolling meeting minutes or something like that, where people can just add stuff, or we have a dedicated scribe every other meeting, that, and or any other tool, Mark. I mean, it doesn't have to be Google Doc, but and then we publish the meeting minutes drafts on GitHub in the open project repository for other projects, and it's always a short document, right? It's the decision protocol basically, and the agenda and attendance is recorded there, and then so there's a draft version, and some projects say if there's no pull requests or change requests in the next 7 days after the meeting, then the draft status gets removed and it is the approved document. So that's kind of a lean way to do that. Or you have the next meeting and say, are there any changes to the minutes from last time? No, and then the draft status gets removed.
Yep. Duncan, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah, so now I have it up 3 times, I guess. So the first one is on the IOB. I do support that. Yeah, it should be an agenda item. I don't know if it made it on the agenda or not, but I think it should be. Even if we don't vote it at this meeting, we at least talk about it and decide how to move it forward. On the fact of should making a new project be a vote or not, although I agree with Jason, we should define the rules and set what they are. The existing rules, because when we made them sub-projects, we decided we didn't need the permission to do it. So if we're going to make them projects, I think we do need to have some sort of formal, but doesn't have to be special majority vote. We can also have a formal vote of those present at the meeting, because then it just is a majority of those present, which I think is called a regular, I don't remember the words, but there's a Robert's Rules of Order name for just, hey, of the people there, because we don't have a quorum rule. So just of the people, we gave enough notice for the meeting, of the people there, they voted yes. I think most stuff should be that way. And in the future, I think adding a project should be that. But I think based on the existing rules, we do unfortunately have to do the bigger vote. And on the minutes, I do think the minutes are a good idea, but I don't think we should go overboard. Some of the people really go nuts on minutes and record like what everybody said. Hey, we got the meeting recorded. It really should just be, hey, we reached this decision. Or in some cases, we couldn't reach this decision, we're kicking it to next month. We don't need to do every other word we said, but just, a few bullets or 2. And some other ones I'm on, they literally do it like Claudia said, real time in a Google Doc. And that way, hey, if Duncan wants to present on the CAW, then it's Duncan's job to, after he finishes the presentation, he writes the 1 sentence in the note on whatever we decided or not. Sort of the people who care about it add to the Google Doc literally live while the meeting's going on. And then it's not, Jason, you have to do extra work, or somebody has to be assigned the secretary. It's just, hey, somebody says, hey, you left that out of the meeting. It's like, well, type it in, dummy. Go from there.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do in the open SSF as well. So I like that whole idea. It makes sense to me. All right. Any other thoughts on just that general topic of what we can do? Another part of this to me is, how do we, I think another thing we need to try to figure out as an organization is how do we encourage some of the activity that is going on in some of these other groups. How do we create value for those participants to be sponsors? Like I almost feel sometimes that like the it's kind of like the sponsor stuff. There's the marketing piece. But if you don't care about that, then it's a little bit less clear, the value you're getting. Anyway, I think that that's something we need to think about as an org is, you know, how do we walk this line? Hey, Duncan, is your hand still up or did you have?
No, I took it down and put it up again to your last comment. Unfortunately,
Okay.
these are interactive. The concept of voting and what rights you get by being a member, if we go by consensus, lazy consensus, nobody objects, and you don't have to go to the meeting to vote, there's no incentive to go to the meeting. Okay, you can object without going and get everything bogged. You don't get to say in it. So some of the TC rules, which evolved over years, like, you know, you lose your voting rights if you don't go to 2 in a row, come about from basically forcing people to go because there's that one time when you need to vote, you need it. And you actually have votes that actually matter. So just to, you know, put in your head to recognize there is a trade-off there, and to put in, I'll say Claudia's head and then my own and your head, Jason, as board members, sort of the value of being an open project. OCA has to look at the bigger value. Hey, what's the value of being an open project? That this whole issue of you don't have to pay to play is a, you know, we as OCA might bring to our larger board and to the staff the, hey, you know, like we're losing sponsors because also doesn't have to pay. I mean, NSA is a major contributor to PACE and they don't have to pay a penny. And they've been fairly open on the fact, well, why should I? You know, they're NSA, they're not allowed to market, so they can't get anything out of the marketing part. You know, they can contribute without, you know, whereas they pay the money to be in the TCs because, you know, they got to pay to play. So that's not our fault. That's bigger than us. That's Oasis, but we are literally being impacted by it. So thought I'd at least bring it up. You're muted, Jason, if you're talking.
Yeah, and it's difficult, right, too, because the whole impetus for doing this work and founding the OCA was to remove that barrier, right? So I definitely don't, I myself personally, from our perspective, I don't like the whole pay to play. But what I think that the part that's missing is like, for example, so your example with the NSA or Charlie and JHU, right? It's to someone who's trying to learn about us, it's non-obvious that these organizations are even involved, right? And that's part of an issue that I think we need to try to unpack. Is how do we raise the profile of these organizations that are involved in the work so that we can draw more to the work without them being sponsors necessarily. That's what we need to try to figure out. It's a very difficult problem.
I mean, is that difficult, or do we just remove the barrier of restricting marketing that OCA does to those sponsors that are paying members? Like, that's the limitation.
But then you've removed an incentive to sponsor, right? That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that, but for those members that are sponsoring, that want the marketing strength of the OCA to be as great as possible for their benefit, for that marketing benefit, then they should want more participant logos on the board than less. And, you know, maybe we have to figure out some other restriction that is for members only, paying members. I don't know what that is, but you know, it could be conference participation or something.
It could be. Anyway, I think it's a big topic, something to think about. And something we need to continue to discuss, right? Because we are seeing, there's kind of two different things going, because the network effect is real, right? And we are seeing folks leave. And I'm just getting a little bit concerned about the overall organizational health. So to me, it's pretty important.
Since it's public knowledge, and if I was smart enough, I could probably go figure it out, but I haven't. Are you allowed to say who's left?
Yeah, so Copito's not renewing. And who was the other one recently?
We haven't heard from
Correct you.
Cyber Reason
And Threat Q, right?
and Threat Quotient, right? And we haven't heard from Cyber Reason. Both Mark and I have talked to Sam, but he's tough to get through to. And I don't know, Mark, if you've heard anything. I mean,
No,
Threat
but I owe
Quotient,
him a
I'm not
follow-up.
good. If you could copy me on that, because I copied you and I was, I pinged him right before a hurricane, but yeah, I haven't heard back. I'm not that surprised about Threat Quotient because I tried to engage them to get them involved for a long time. I don't know if you guys know, what might be going on with them from a corporate perspective. Capato is a little bit, surprising. Yeah, so that's where we're up to.
I noticed, since we're on this topic, D, and I just opened it up, I noticed that we still don't have the Trellix on the site, and we have McAfee, which is technically wrong.
Now, I think we have Trellix up on OCA, don't we? Or it's because, I know what it is. Let me see. Do we not have Trellix on the OCA website?
it still says McAfee.
Okay, well, I changed it in my document, but that's a legal thing because we still have not gotten, Trellix has still not signed the membership application.
Okay. It's just a little odd because, well, McAfee hasn't either.
Right, right. But you know what? They paid. I mean, so Trellix paid, but we just can't pay for OCA, but we can't get them to just sign the document.
But doesn't
Who
that
are
mean
you trying
put
to
their
contact?
logo up, but they can't do anything?
We don't have their logo on here. We've got McAfee because we do have an MA for McAfee. And
No, I guess what I'm asking is what determines whether the logo goes on? They have to sign the agreement to put the logo on, or they have to sign the agreement to do any work?
well, they have to sign the agreement for us as the new company before we can put that on. Does that make sense? Right. So what
I
we
would have thought
have
if
is,
they paid, you could put the logo on. They just couldn't do anything until they signed the agreement.
I don't know, as long as we're looking at it, I think it's fine. It's a little bit weird to me.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's just been really hard. And who am I working with there? Hang on, I'll let you know. Is there anyone else on that list?
Well, on the McAfee thing, what will it take to take the McAfee off?
Well, we probably technically could take it off because they haven't
Easily.
signed. I mean, why would
Yeah.
you want to take it off? As I'm just curious.
The company doesn't exist anymore.
Well, that's true.
So it looks
That's
stupid.
true. Okay, well, we can probably
Yeah.
do that. I mean, they may come back and say, well, we paid. If you guys want it
They
off.
can't
then-
come back and say they paid. They don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of spinning around on it, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's take it offline. The thing is that the legal entity has changed,
Right,
right? I think that's what's missing a bit. Like the McAfee entity that signed originally is not the McAfee entity that has this logo now. The IP
Yeah.
for that logo was sold to the spinoff, and
Right.
they now only do AV, right? So it's tricky.
Yeah,
So
so
I
we can
take,
just take it,
I'll take the logo from the website, off the website, right?
yeah,
Then, okay.
Yeah, and D, I'll help you track down somebody at Trellix to sign something.
okay, thank you.
That's not a big deal.
Kent, it's Kent Landfield, and I don't know if you guys, which is shocking, right? Kent is fantastic, and he must just be up to his eyeballs, or he's retired, I'm not sure. Do you guys know anything? I've tried to ping him on LinkedIn and through email.
I talked to him over the summer. I thought he was going to get back involved, but I could follow up with him. I could also go to my old boss, Gay Lockwood. She's running alliances now.
Okay,
We can track somebody down. That's not a big deal.
okay, great, thank you, I appreciate it.
What about Tenable? I have not heard anything from them since they joined.
No, they should not be on there anymore either. They haven't paid. You know, that was,
Darren?
you know, Darren, and Darren has since moved on. I had an appointment with folks at RSA, and they basically told me that they were not going to renew. And I tried to reach out to a bunch of different people on LinkedIn. I finally got one guy that would say he his bosses. I think I communicated that with you guys, but they are past expired, so they should come down as well. We're just sort of going through our offboarding process now.
All right.
And Visua, you know, they haven't been involved at all, unfortunately, since Mark and I had the conversation with them about their application, which is really unfortunate. So you know, they haven't been expired yet, but they're still on here and they're not active. So
a question. I mean, obviously this gets to, we have to be better at providing what's the value of being a sponsor, but I have an inverse question. So given that there are less sponsors in 2022 than there were in 2021, or will be less in 2023 than there were in the beginning of 2022, what does that mean to the OCA? Not what does it mean to Oasis? Oasis obviously has less revenue, and that's a Jason Duncan at the board discussion. But what's it mean to OCA? Do we care? Can we do we do anything less because we have less money?
well, I personally care a lot for visibility. I mean, I'm constantly trying to, you know, but I look at like the architecture group hasn't met in the longest time. You know, unless I'm.
Those are different. That's different. I'm asking what, because our budget is smaller, do we care? Because the answer is no, then who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Duncan, and I think, you know, if you're trying to separate the two things, then it technically doesn't directly affect the OCA's operations anyway. I would say the thing that it affects most is getting people to care, right? Which goes back to the other thing about how you figure out how to raise the profile of some of these other non-sponsor organizations, because there's a, you know, as we all know this, that there's a big networking effect, right? In terms of
Yeah, can we somehow put some of our money that we do have into something to get that networking effect benefit? I mean, I'm not a marketing person, but it seems sort of weird that it doesn't matter if we don't have as much money, combined with, you know, we're having a trouble getting more people to do it. You know, their money doesn't basically buy anything.
Well, the money pays for the services that Oasis is paying, is giving to the project, right? It's
I
just
agree, but because we're sort of not, it's not as directly correlated. If we could get a direct correlation somehow, hey, because you didn't pay X, you don't get Y, you're more likely to get the X. We're just not getting that. Even if it's not a direct to the company, it's the industry isn't getting it. You know, we couldn't go to RSA this year because we didn't have it, or we couldn't have a conference or something. We have less interoperability. The world is less safe because we couldn't do something.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. It does get really complicated though.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think this
Something
ties
we'll
back
solve on this
into,
call, but we should think it through.
yeah, I mean, I think this ties back to, you know, vision and like charting a course to something deliverable that people can benefit from. We've talked about this many times, and maybe now with the pain of losing a few members, then the Jason and I and Xiaoquei and some others and get together and write some things down to bring back and as a proposal.
Yep. All right.
Hey, Xiaoquei?
Hello. Sorry, that's I got to another meeting.
It's okay. We hadn't gotten to your agenda item yet anyway. So do we want to skip to that in the agenda or keep going through your agenda?
Well, why don't we skip to that item? So Xiaoquei, were you here? You're here to discuss the move from the IOB to from a working group to project officially?
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, my understanding, so you know, back to, we were discussing earlier in the call how we're going to be looking at the governance document soon and seeing if we want to revise some things. But according to the current governance, the PGB has to approve by a full majority vote, bringing on quote unquote new projects. And I think the minutia we need to drill into here is transitioning something from a working, because we already did this for IOB. This is why it's so kind of weird. We did
Well,
this
but be
for
careful,
IOB.
Jason. I asked at the time about this. We did not have a full majority vote at the time to make it one because it was only a working group and didn't need one. So you can't say you didn't need it then, you don't need it now.
Okay. Well, regardless, we do
I'm
need
actually
one
for
now.
it. I'm for passing it, but I am worried we have to follow the rules.
Yeah, we do need one now, right? So what we're going to have to do, we don't have anywhere near the numbers on this call. We're gonna have to open up a ballot, and we're gonna have to whip the votes to bring it over. Now, I think the other item was, do we want to bring Charlie onto the TSC as part of that discussion? Now, according to the current document that I have here, the TSC is appointed by the PGB, but it does not say that it requires a vote. I can't see any combination of things here that would make it require a vote. So I think we can do it by consensus. Is that agree with what your understanding is, Claudia?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that we can just, you know, raise it here now. Like I would move to approve adding Charlie Frick to the technical steering committee of the OCA PGB, the technical
Second.
steering committee of the OCA. So if anybody has any concerns with that on this call? If not, then what we can do is we can email the list with that decision as part of the minutes. And if anyone else has any concerns, they can raise them over the next week. And if no one says anything, then we can assume we have consensus to move forward.
Sold.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. And I think for each of the projects, once there is a representative join TSC, we kind of by default assume that the representative is a maintainer of the project, right?
Yeah, I think it's not explicitly required, but yeah, that would be the de facto assumption.
Yeah, that means when we have a repository in OCA for that project, of course, each repository needs at least one maintainer, and that's something that we need to make sure that someone takes the responsibility to handle all the PR, to handle all the things, discussions and things. So that's, I think, quite important. So that we just want to make it clear that the representative join TSC should usually be the one of the maintainers from the project, that Charlie can take the responsibility.
Yeah,
Agreed, although we can't actually make the repo until we have the vote that Jason was talking about. So we can agree to Charlie on the TSC today, boom, it's done. Or a week from now, once it expires, whatever, but it's effectively done today. But the actual making of the repo can't occur until after we've agreed it actually can be a sub-project, which unfortunately takes this vote thing.
So when
Okay.
do you want this vote to be run? As soon as possible, probably,
Yeah.
right?
Sooner
yeah,
rather
I think we should open the ballot as soon as possible and then
Okay.
start whipping the votes.
Okay, I will, I can do that. I can talk with Chad and open it tomorrow because it's the end of my workday and I'm like, I don't want to make any mistakes, but I can do it tomorrow.
That's
So we
fine.
can start, and I think it has to be open for at least 7 days. I think that's the,
Yeah, and as it gets close, if
Yeah.
we don't have enough people, then we,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a little bit until we whip enough votes, as Jason said. However, it does get into the number of votes. We do have to know the number of votes. We started earlier in the call talking about it wasn't exactly clear how many actual members we have at the moment.
Yes, that's a very good point. And I was just actually
This
looking
will be a
at
case where
the-
smaller is actually better because the higher probability we'll get half of them.
Yeah, so I will make sure that the roster is current tomorrow as well.
If the people who can't vote, like McAfee because they don't exist, or that other
Yeah.
company because they haven't signed yet, they shouldn't be on the list because otherwise they won't be able to vote, but they will keep us from reaching quorum.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Let's make sure that the list is 100% correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, the other, I know we talked about it at the call, but just on the agenda, just a reminder to everyone, the RSA submission deadline is about a week away. And there was a couple of emails sent to the mailing list. I'm not sure, I never saw any replies. I haven't had a lot of time to think about it myself in terms of a submission for myself. I think I am going to get one thing in, but it may not be OCA related specifically. So if there's, I just wanted to raise it here for awareness to make sure everyone on the call was aware that this deadline's coming in. If there is anything we want to try to organize, now's the time because the clock is ticking really fast.
So Charlie did make a submission on behalf of APL and IOB. So that's a great thing. Hopefully we'll keep
Oh,
our
that's a
fingers
good
crossed for
thing.
him. And if he wants to make a submission and needs help, let us know.
No, I
I
was
would
not
ask
sure.
that next year, again, it's too late for this year. This date always catches up with me way too fast because it's just so far before everything. If we could make some sort of like schedule to remind us, a month in advance instead of after the deadline expired and they've extended it a week, that might help a little bit.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there was an email sent out about a month ago.
Okay.
From Oasis and
Really?
RSA, yeah.
Well,
Claudia,
it was also, it was August, so I understand. If it was on August, I didn't do anything, so that's probably why I missed it.
yeah, that's the problem with this one, to your point, Duncan. It's always like at the tail end of the summer that they're doing this, and I don't know why they do this. I don't know. The whole process is a little bit weird because I know they're not doing anything with them during November, December. So I don't know why they try to haul this stuff out in the tail end of August and September when everyone's trying to get back to school and Labor Day and summer vacations and everything else. It's just a bad time. But that's not us, it's RSA. So
Yeah,
Um,
I think emails for reminder is good enough now, and for RC and Black Hats, I think we will not miss the email every year, and it's more importantly for other opportunities. For example, the SANS threat hunting summits that we did last year. This type of opportunities that is not regular, or things that if someone finds such opportunity, I think it's good to email the mail list so that everyone at OCA is aware. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on all the time. And yeah, like the SANS ones, I know there was actually SANS just had a blue team summit last week. So the threat hunting one will be coming up pretty soon. I'm positive. So that would be one to try to track. All right. So moving on, the final item I had here was Mark's item that he wanted to discuss about figuring out for more general high level strategy roadmap vision document so that we can try to plan things out for the next 12 months. Like, what are we trying to achieve? How is some of the work in these work groups and projects being tied together? You know, we talked about trying to build some kind of an integration lab in the past that never really happened, which actually, Duncan, might tie into your topic about the automation workshop.
Right, but before we dive into that one, can we kill the governance one real quick? Whatever thing we're supposed to do, I don't believe we actually have.
Oh, the governance document. So, okay, so I will ask Claudia if you can email that to the whole PGB, the link to that
Will
document.
do.
Yeah, I'll paste
Yeah.
it here as well, Duncan.
Yeah.
Just so that's in the Zoom, but the Zoom chat goes away. So
Yeah.
there's the link, Duncan. Claudia will email as well.
Yeah.
So for folks who might have missed the beginning of the call, back in February, Chet proposed a series of updates and suggestions to the OCA governance that we probably want to strongly consider since it's Chet. But I haven't had a chance to review it, so I have no opinion. But over the next, between now and the next PGB meeting, if you can go into that Google document and we can just, you know, use the Google Documents facilities to comment on the items that the chat has highlighted. I'd also say, as I said earlier, if we're going to do a revision, now is the time to look really closely at whether or not we think all of these things require votes. And if they require votes, if they require full special majority votes, right? When we formed the OCA, we were being a little bit cautious, perhaps, and trying to say that, you know, we don't want anything to sneak under the covers. But now we've been doing this for a couple of years. You know, maybe there are things that we should be looking at more consensus based, since it is difficult to get quorum sometimes, or just regular majority votes, right? Because a regular majority vote is just the majority of whoever bothered to vote, right?
Yep.
Which is a much easier thing to get done than trying to get a special majority, right? And maybe some of these decisions should be switched to that mode, so it's kind of a nice middle ground. If you bothered to vote, you can have your say. So everybody take a look at that. Again, it'll be emailed, but it's also right there in the Zoom chat. All right,
So it's restricted access currently, but I will share the link with all PGB members.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, Mark, did you want to take the mic?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think you summarized it well. I think, you know, we've talked about losing members in OCA, and you know, I think it's pretty obvious. Like, we're, you know, I can understand from being a vendor and showing up and not being able to figure out what's in it for them. We've got bits and pieces, you know, we've got a handful of Legos, but it's not a complete kit, you know, for somebody to come in and, you know, build an open XDR with OCA's tools, for example, you know, whatever that thing is. And I think that, you know, frankly, put, you know, Jason, you and Xiaoquei on the spot. I think, you know, right now, the actual technology that's been contributed to OCA is largely IBM. Optimistic about the IOB, and it's something great will come out of that, but we're still missing some glue. And, you know, I've got ideas, but to make things more formal, like, I think, you know, I'd love anybody's input on, you know, we come up with a vision document, we come up with a couple slides, we can circulate that amongst the PGB and try and get some consensus, more thought, but then how do we, you know, formalize that and make it useful? I think the bottom line, though, is there's got to be something tangible that is useful tooling for the cybersecurity community, practitioners specifically, that they can download and run and consume, agnostic of any single member organization. You know, if I'd like to use Kestrel, I'd like to use StickShifter, but you know, do I have to be a vendor to implement those things into, you know, my technology stack? Like, you know, I think we need to up level and kind of, you know, I did this exercise inside Tenzir, actually. It's like identifying who is our community. Like, that's the first question. You know, and then figuring out what do we need to give that community member to be successful. And it's got to be immediate and ongoing value by definition. Duncan?
Yeah, I was going to say, I do think we need the vision document. I'd go further into making it tangible. I think we need the sort of use cases or scenarios or whatever word you want to do that sort of shows the value to the end user. And that way, how everyone's piece part plugs into it, you can see. And I will at least, and I'm usually the one who says the IBM only thing, but I'll actually push back a little bit on your IBM only statement, because now that PACE is a project and is actually coming up with some stuff, even though NSA is not sitting here on the call at the moment, they at least have stuff that actually, hopefully soon will interact. In fact, there was either a meeting today or it's going to be tomorrow. I remember I had a conflict between the Kestrel people and the PACE people to actually make the sort of end-to-end use case of the different things kicking each other off. And I think that's what we need more of. I happen to be such a PACE proponent because I actually see it being one of these, hey, it ties several things together, and it ties us in with some other big crowds like the SBOM crowd, because supply chain's so hot at the moment. But if we could, again, tie it, or you mentioned the XDR stuff, if we could tie into some of those other, how this benefits the end user, because we're doing A, B, C, and D, and look how these things all sort of tie together. And yeah, we don't have all of A, B, C, and D yet, but we got maybe, or maybe we have A, D, and F at the moment. We still need to fill in B, C, and E or whatever. But that's what I think we need to do. We need to show, because if we can do that, then the people who are doing the B that we don't have say, no, we do this, or the people that are doing something similar say, oh yeah, I got to participate in this because I, care about SBOMs. Right now, nobody who cares about SBOMs is playing as much as they should be, because you don't sort of see the benefit of, oh, I see, it ties into PACE, which then talks into the automation, which kicks off the threat hunting. It's unfortunately, we're complicated. That's our whole value, is putting all this complicated stuff together. We just got to get it put together. Over.
Yep.
Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah,
And,
I agree.
We fully agree, and we will have some of the synergies starting tomorrow to see how to get things better together. Yeah.
So I want to pivot to the automation workshop, Duncan. So I don't know if you want to spend a couple minutes just explaining what it is, but to folks who aren't aware, but it's actually interesting the more I think about it, Ari, the earlier conversation about how do you provide real benefit, because like if the automation workshop was if it was an event that was actually hosted by OCA, it was provided by OCA, then it could actually turn into a real event. an Oasis
Right.
hosted event with sponsor tables and things like that. And then you would actually have a reason to
Right,
be an OCA sponsor, because maybe only the PGB members are allowed to have the tables,
right.
right? If you want to do that, you have to go and join. You have to be a sponsor.
Which right now it has none of that. I'm the host. It's Duncan's wacko idea of, hey, we have to tie all this stuff together. And it, we used to have OpenC2 plug fests, and part of the issues was, well, OpenC2 is command and control. You got to have something to command and control. So we got to do it with other things. And it's sort of, and CTI already had plug fests. So we said, all right, we'll have an OpenC2 plug fest. We sort of talked among ourselves. We said, hey, we really should be talking to some other stuff. So I said, all right, let's open it up to everybody, and created this out of the whole cloth thing called the Cybersecurity Automation Workshop, of which we've now had a few, and they've been pretty successful. But again, they're just, I in my spare time, which I have zero of, sort of deciding to, all right, let's pick a date, let's talk someone into hosting it, and go on from there. It's probably actually big enough now and got enough meat behind it, and it does benefit things like OCA and OpenC2 and PACE, to just, hey, let's do it. And then, all right, well, I don't want to keep running. I don't mind running it, but it just needs more than me running it. So let's give it some infrastructure. So where should it go? Well, I can incorporate. I don't want to do that. All right, well, OCA actually is a pretty good lineup. Cybersecurity automation, what we're doing in OCA, they sort of line up together. So should it be a work group, because it's really just us emailing each other on how to do it? Should it
It's
be
not really a work
project?
group.
Because it's
right?
got,
It would be-
open
this would
source.
be it's not a work group. Like, it would be. So I think we should talk about it more, and we probably need to bring in Jane,
Right.
D, and talk about it, right? So,
Yeah, she and I were supposed to get together on this topic, and my calendar's been too full. She has been bugging me. I'll give her credit.
Yeah, I mean, Oasis used to have borderless cyber.
Well, in
as
theory, still does, but hasn't done it in a
Theory
while. We
still
have
does,
one of them
yeah.
next
I
to it.
mean, maybe this is some kind of combination, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
Good
one
to
of the previous automation workshops was in conjunction with borderless cyber. And that worked out pretty well. So, but again, I do think it's a value. I mean, sort of tying the OCA parts together is valuable from a OCA viewpoint, and they all happen to play well in CAW, a horrible acronym name, but whatever. It's easier to say than Cybersecurity Automation Workshop. There's other things to automation that maybe aren't in OCA, but I think we could get a real value if we could tie in with some of them. If we could sort of tie in, vendor proprietary stuff, because, hey, look, Stick Shifter, yes, it's not putting out a standard Stix interface, but Stick Shifter is taking vendor A, B, and C and plugging it in to kick off the thing that causes the, Cacao work playbook to run, which causes you to, kick off Kestrel, which causes you to go, query PACE. Those sort of bigger picture, hey, a CSO could walk in and go, oh, I
Well,
get how
yeah,
all this stuff plays together now.
And we did some of that at Black Hat, right?
Yeah.
So like Zhao Kui has, we have a Kestrel, we have a Cacao playbook
Yep.
invoking a Kestrel hunt. And I think is the OpenC2 piece part of that as well, Zhao Kui, or was that something we left out, the zoo stuff?
It's
Yeah,
at least there with hand waving.
That's the OpenC2 parts there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there is an OpenC2 piece in there as well. But I mean, to your point, Duncan, it's just kind of buried in, we did a demo, and it's like, how is this packaged together, right?
Yeah, and what's its value that AT&T is again? Well, AT&T is not on this call. I think they should be. Why do I think they should be? Because they'd actually benefit a lot if all this stuff worked together.
Right.
Could it be something like a SIG? So you don't have to meet every month,
Something like a what?
a special interest group, a SIG? I mean, I'm just putting on my marketing
In
hat.
OCA, well, one is we don't have to do it in OCA, but I was thinking it would be good to do it in OCA. And OCA at the moment has two things, projects or sub projects and mail list, basically, a working group. So
Well,
Working
there's
groups.
also, there are subcommittees, like there's the marketing subcommittee. Right, so you could definitely have an event subcommittee or CAW
True.
subcommittee. There's nothing that prevents that. Because it's really a subcommittee. You're just meeting and discussing things. It's not the same as like a project or worker.
it is basically a combination technical marketing.
Correct.
It's the getting the bits to work together is sort of
So-
why the engineers are all there. But the real reason for doing it is the bigger picture to show the value.
So it feels to me like we should have some kind of follow-up with Jade and D. What do you think is the next step we should do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not wild about the idea of it just being an event because that doesn't give it any structure. And I'm afraid if it's just a discussion list on group side, it'll go the way of the marketing group, which is, as we know, problematic. I think that there's enough people interested.
There is software, it is tying stuff together. It's almost a super project, like most of the
Right.
projects, sub projects is almost a super project. It isn't anything of itself. It's how you tie all of the other ones together.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a
That
real
could be
thing, and I think
from
it would
OCA
attract.
speak. That
It
could be a
just-
sub project.
I mean,
It'll have
it-
software.
Yeah. It is a project, but it's also like, it's an event. It needs event planning. Right?
Yep.
That's,
But again, you could do that under the project auspices, right?
you could. As long as the right people were there.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
that's gonna be true however you do it.
Yeah.
Again, you can make it part of marketing if you want. I got
I
the
think
impression.
I think it's
wasn't.
fantastic opportunity. I just don't know what the next step should be.
I mean, I don't think there's any reason, Duncan, why we can't split it. It could go under marketing, let marketing handle event planning, and then let, maybe the TSC is responsible for the gluing of these things together that gets showcased through the event.
Sure.
Or our architecture working group, that we could kind of, it needs some TLC, but we could get that back up and running and have the architecture working group be responsible for that prototype. And
Yeah, there's a little bit of chicken and egg involved.
yeah,
Needs that. It needs both the marketing piece and the architecture piece, neither of which have been that looking to do this. So we need to incent them to do it, or maybe just us doing it is what gets them back to doing stuff. I don't know.
All right, I have to jump to my next meeting.
You too.
So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll send it a note. I think what we should do is like set up another conversation with like you, Mark, D, and Jane, and we can keep talking about it, see what we want to do. I think we need to create the proposal and bring it to the PGB, and I don't think we've got it figured out.
Right, that's the issue. What to propose is where I'm stuck.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing, so maybe we'll set up another thing. If we can find time with people next week, we can talk about it next week.
All right.
yeah, I'm game.
All right.
All right, thanks, Jason.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
And yeah, and just a reminder, yeah, so that Claudia is going to email the link to the document, so please review it between now and next month. Thanks.